That's always useful.
So
Excellent. Yeah.
obviously everyone's heard that. So just to let you know, we are recording. It will be publicly shared. So
Tom,
only
I'm
share
looking at
stuff
you.
you want to go out publicly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, so we've got 4 speakers today. So we've got 5-ish minutes from each of our speakers. And then there'll be a chance for Q&A after we've heard from all 4. And as Yvonne said, you can bring them in into the chat box, or if you just stick your finger up, we'll bring you in, can ask your questions. So we've got Jamie Trout from Streetwork, we've got Tom Youll from Shelter Scotland, we've got Rory Brown from Govan Housing Association, and Dwayne Pascal, who volunteers with Digital for Good, and he's also CTO with Crichton. He'll talk a wee bit about kind of what that means in his role with those organisations. Grand. So first person we're going to hear from is Jamie at Streetwork. I'll hand over to you just now, Jamie.
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting us along, Ross and Maddie. Yeah, I'm Jamie Trout and I manage Get Digital Scotland, which is a national digital inclusion programme for Scotland's homelessness sector. And today I just want to talk to you about the response that we've given to coronavirus crisis, and it's around helping people to access the digital world. So research shows that people who experience homelessness are amongst the most digitally excluded groups in society. And even in normal times, digital inclusion is pretty essential. You know, my view is that access to digital is as important as healthcare or education, but during a global health pandemic with social distancing and self-isolation, it just becomes absolutely vital. And it's a lifeline for many people. So in this context, there was a group of Scotland's leading homelessness organisations, known as HP3, that are in discussions with the Scottish Government to identify how we can actually help people to get access to the digital world throughout the homelessness sector. And Get Digital is being tasked with exploring how this could work and how we can make that happen. So we've been running for the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been planning, and we're just about to start running a digital access trial, which we are doing with one of our teams in Edinburgh, our housing support team. And we're looking to give 36 service users a connected device with support from digital champions, with the hope that we can improve quality of life. So the purpose of the trial is to get a proof of concept, to test the project delivery model, and to trial the devices and connectivity, to create and deliver a training program for staff to support people with the devices and connecting to the digital world, and to identify costs, and also to monitor and evaluate the impact of the project, so we can go back to the Scottish Government and hopefully look to expand the trial, not just within Simon Community Services, but within all homelessness services throughout the sector and for a longer period of time. So if we look back to when this first started a few weeks ago, first of all, we just needed to know who would be interested in this. So we tried our VHS team, and I think within a day we had all 36 service users registered. Our staff was super keen to get on board with that. And we had the participants for the trial ready to go. We used Google, so we had a ready-made database ready to sort of run the project with. And the next step was to find suitable devices and connectivity. So we had to consider that the project needed to be scalable. It was potentially going to be rolled out across the entire sector. And much like the No One Left Behind program or project, the potential of finding thousands of devices is actually quite a daunting one in terms of supply, especially in the current environment. But we sort of developed some requirements for the devices that we want, and we wanted to go with smartphones with an unmodified Android operating system. So the reason for that is that this allows us to create a one-size-fits-all training program to deliver the project, but also so that we can have scalability. If we do need to go on from buying 36 devices to potentially thousands of devices, if we use an operating system that's unmodified, we can, the devices that we choose can come from a number of different manufacturers. So Google, Nokia, and Motorola all use unmodified Android. So if we did have to buy thousands of devices, the training program would work on any of the devices that they produce. So it allowed us to be a bit more scalable in that sense. In terms of data, we were quite ambitious, but we wanted people to have unlimited access to data. We wanted people to be able to use video calling, YouTube or iPlayer. And there was also some thought put into what price level of the device we wanted to go in at. And we decided that to go in at the sort of the bottom end of the range was probably a better idea than going in at the top of the range, simply because if people are struggling financially and we give them a £1,000 smartphone, it makes it very difficult for them to justify keeping hold of that and not selling that. So we decided to go in at the bottom, but we also wanted to do a piece of work around helping people to realize the value of digital. So there was some work to be done in sort of helping people realize that the value of a digital device in your hand and connecting you to the internet and apps and friends and family and getting information is worth more than the second-hand sale price that you'd get from selling the device. So there's probably a bit of a psychological journey involved in that. So people may have the device and use it and benefit from it and then sell it and miss it. And by the time they get a second device, hopefully they'll have increased their value of what that device can actually do for them. So we fully expect that there might be people that sell devices or they get lost or stolen, and that's kind of needs to be built in as part of the project. So once we kind of found out what kind of devices we wanted to buy, it was around looking at what providers can offer that. And it was easily the most frustrating part of the project was going around in circles with telecoms companies and being on hold and being cut off and being promised to get a call back and not getting it. But we eventually found a really great provider who were super responsive and helpful and really helped us to kind of think through what kind of device we'd look at. And they're based in Scotland, called DB Comms. So I can definitely recommend that if you're looking at contacting them if you're looking at a similar project. And the device we settled on was a Motorola E6. So it's got 2 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage, just over a 6-inch screen. It has Android 9 and really excellent reviews. And in terms of value for money, we thought that was the best device to go for. They could also offer us a completely unlimited data package with unlimited calls and texts within the UK as well. And we also have a price cap on that as well, so that we're not going to get any unexpected bills further down the line. So far we had the staff had signed up service users, we had devices and SIM cards ready to go, but now we wanted to focus on what kind of support our digital champions could give to staff, to give to service users to help them use the devices. So in normal times, we have a Get Digital framework, which looks at 20 essential digital skills. It's very similar to the Essential Digital Skills framework, but it's a very broad approach and it takes time to work through and learn those skills. So we wanted staff to focus on things that would have an immediate and powerful impact right now. So we streamlined the framework down to 4 key areas, which were communication, so tools like email, messaging tools and video calls, finding reliable information. So that might be from the NHS or the government or a news outlet. Managing finances, so on managing benefits, online shopping and entertainment. So that could be streaming media, video, podcasts, audiobooks, learning a language, reading, whatever the service users are interested in, because we have a person-centered approach that they'll lead on what kind of tools that they want to learn. So with those 4 key themes, communicating, finding information, managing finances and entertainment, if we could help people to stay in touch, stay safe and be informed, be able to budget and access their money and live within their means and enjoy their spare time and increase their well-being by being entertained on the internet. These are quick wins that could have an enormous impact on the lives of the people that we support. So we developed a quick wins guide around that and sent that out to all staff to encourage staff to work on those key areas. And then we worked with the More Collective. I think Irene's actually on this call. And we pulled together a training session for staff, which covers setting up the device out of the box, learning to use the device in terms of downloading apps or saving bookmarks. And we built the quick win themes into that session as well, so staff could focus on getting the results quickly. And there was also an opportunity for staff to feedback their questions or concerns. And there was some around privacy for service users, some around safeguarding. So we were able to address those as well. But so far it's been really positively received by staff, and like on the most part, they're super excited to be doing this for the people that they support. So finally, we wanted to look at how we could actually deliver the project. And it's quite difficult to do that with social distancing. So in the training session, we covered supporting people at a distance with digital. So the first thing we can do is get the device to the service user by dropping it off for them while maintaining a distance, and teaching them how to turn it on and giving them quick guides. And ideally, we can start doing digital skills development in those 4 key areas, either over the phone or on a video call. And then it was around letting the staff go and use it. I mean, our staff are trained as digital champions anyway, so it allows them to go and deliver the project and help people to get access to all of those key tools that will help them reduce social isolation and be informed. So then we're now just moving on to the stage which is around monitoring and evaluating the project. So we're building a tool based around those quick wins to measure the impact of the project, and we're hoping that this will give us the data we need to provide strong evidence to the Scottish Government that when people have access to a connected device in conjunction with digital champion support, that it leads to a better quality of life. So yeah, this is a super exciting opportunity for Get Digital and all of our digital champions and service users, and mainly because the research shows that the keys to digital inclusion are devices, connectivity, skills, and support, along with like trust and confidence and motivation, which our digital champions do anyway. So for the first time, Get Digital is able to deliver all of these things in one project. We're actually trying to combat all barriers in one project, and we're looking to try and do it at speed as well. So we're just super excited. We can't wait to see the results, and we're very hopeful that this multifaceted approach will get people to be using digital and to increasing the quality of life, and then hopefully to go back to the Scottish Government and get them to roll this out throughout all homelessness services in Scotland. I think that's just about it from me.
Brilliant, thank you, Jamie. I'm sure there'll be loads of people got questions about digital inclusion, and it'd be good actually when we come to kind of Q&A, Irene might jump in some of that stuff as well.
Yeah, sure.
So Irene, I know she's looking at me like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's not going to happen. But so cool. It'd be good to hear now from Tom at Shelter. I'm just going to talk a wee bit about what Shelter have been doing, and I guess Shelter's got obviously a kind of legacy of digital service delivery. So for them as an organisation, probably slightly different from a lot of charities who have made that kind of pivot pretty rapidly. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about 2 main things, and that'll be how we changed the provision of the helpline, and which is not really my field, but I've got some notes here, so it might sound a bit dry, but ask questions if you want, and then talk about the content, because that's what I work on, the public-facing content on Get Advice for Shelter Scotland. So 2 key dates that might be good to remind everybody is the 17th of March, which was when we started working from home, and the 23rd of March, which is when the lockdown started. So it was a pretty, the whole run up to the COVID thing, you're hearing the thing around the virus coming over, they're getting a certain amount of cases, and we're sitting there at work going, are we going to have to work from home? Are we going to have to do this? Are we going to have to do that? And our managers were in meetings trying to work out resilience programs and coping mechanisms. And then it all came down pretty quickly, if you remember. It was Boris had a chat saying, we're going to do social distancing. Our shelter decided that everybody had to work from home. And in a period of around 12 to 24 hours, there was no break in service, but we got the helpline, all the 8 guys who work in the helpline working from home. And that was amazing. They all had laptops. They all took to it with no problems. And we have 9 staff on the helpline. And over the period of the 4 weeks of the lockdown, we've had a pretty uninterrupted service on the chat and on the helpline. And just let me check my notes. Yeah, so one of the things that we were concerned about at the start of all this was keeping the idea of a team together, keeping the idea of making people have support, but also as well as a chat. So we set up a WhatsApp group, we set up Slack channels so we could share information, so we could keep people in touch with each other so people didn't feel isolated and they could reach out for help. And we have had 800 calls to the helpline over the first 4 weeks of the lockdown and 1,500 chats. And 70% of all these have been around COVID. And the main, I'm going to get, this is boring stats, but it might be interesting to you. Around 30% of them were about advice on how to find temporary accommodation. This is quite interesting, which will come onto the content later. We're trying to work out what people mean by temporary accommodation. Is it temporary accommodation for homelessness? Is it temporary accommodation because they may be self-isolating and they have a partner who works? Or just, you know, temporary accommodation can be quite a universal term. A quarter of the calls were about people looking to stay in their current home. 10% of the calls were around people wanting to improve their situation with the landlord. And another 10% and 5% were wanting to improve circumstances by leaving the current home and wanting advice to improve their financial situation. So that's a helpline. You can ask me questions about that. I know there's a colleague on the call who might be able to answer more direct questions about the helpline. So if I need help, I'll be shouting on Louise. So we'll come to the stuff I actually know stuff about. So we didn't have any, of course we didn't have any content on the website around Corona. I'd been off for a week, came in on a Tuesday morning and was sitting there. I work by myself in Scotland, there's a team in England. We set up a working group and we started talking around what are we going to do? Normally do a thing called content design, where we identify what the user needs are and what people are asking, rather than just giving them all the information. We would try and work out what people actually are coming to the website for. But we couldn't do this time because it's all brand new. It's all in the front of people. So we decided that we'd create a separate page rather than disseminating the information all around the website. And as and when the Westminster government and the Scottish government announced initiatives, we would update this page with basic advice of what the changes were, signpost people to better resources, or signpost them deeper into the site for more information. So we got a page turned down in 3 days, which is quite quick for Shelter Scotland. And over the first week, it was pretty much just updating with regards to the new initiatives. Then the content design work came in. We started looking at the stats that were coming from the online chat, coming from the helpline, trying to work out the themes and the questions that people were asking, which would inform what we put on the Corona page, inform the order of the information on the Corona page, and identify any gaps that we had. So that's, you know, that's where we are now. We're allowing ourselves to take more time to understand what people are looking for, and, you know, updating the page as we go along. So in the 4 weeks of the lockdown, the first 4 weeks, we had 70,000 unique page views, and that was 31% of all traffic to Shelter Scotland's website, which, when I first saw that figure, scared me a little bit because we've got quite a big website, but 31% of all traffic were going to this one page. 70% of it was from a mobile, which is a concern for us because people seem to be bouncing off the page at quite a high rate if they're on mobile. And we're looking into how we can improve the mobile experience for the page. And that's all I've got to say for now.
That's brilliant, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, I think really, I mean, we maybe pick this up in the kind of Q&A, is getting people into that mindset of content on your website has always been important, but at this point in time is particularly important for a lot of people who would traditionally pop into an office or maybe pick up the phone when your helpline isn't working in the same way that it used to be because it's not really directed to people's individual homes. Is that content on your website is now more important than ever before. So I'm sure there'll be some questions from Tom around that, maybe just some top tips about how we can optimize content and what we should be thinking about when we're developing content on our sites. Okay, I thought it'd be worthwhile to pick up Rory's going to come in from Govan Housing Association now.
Hi, folks, and thanks very much for having me. I have kind of 3 topics to talk about in terms of how we met some of the immediate needs that came out of the kind of COVID response, how we've been looking at getting devices out to our tenants, and some of the kind of stuff around connecting the dots locally, which is part of my role. I have 2 small disclaimers at the start. The first is that this is by no means the best method. It just seems to be how we've been working. So I always appreciate being picked to speak about these things, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're experts in this. And the second is that as frustrating as it is to be indoors and coordinate all this stuff, there are a lot of amazing projects in Govan who are on the ground leading some of these projects, and I'm hopefully going to mention them all so that they get the recognition they deserve as well as part of the rollout of this work. So the main thing for us, and Tom spoke about it at the start, was around, and it's weird to think about it historically now, is about the rollout of the kind of lockdown stuff, and it feels so long ago, but we were rather fortunate because we had been doing a digital inclusion program for the last couple of years. We had some resources in place. We had been doing digital inclusion stuff, so we had programs that were working. And the first thing that had happened to us was a week before lockdown, we had made a decision to close our community and digital hub. And that was kind of around safeguarding tenants, about not being able to guarantee hygiene standards. And we were having a discussion before lockdown about how do we meet some of the essential needs that were coming from those 2 spaces. So that was the first kind of big challenge for us, was our community and digital hub meet 2 very important needs for some of our more isolated tenants. That is that they are places for food provision and they're places for digital access. So lockdown happened and we were immediately able to offer a fantastic partnership with the Salvation Army and Govan Youth Information Project, who had been given funds to meet the kind of school foods program. I can't quite remember the fund, but there was some money from Glasgow about kids going off on holidays and you meeting their kind of food needs. I'll remember it and put it in the chat. So we were very able to change what we were planning to deliver and turn it into a kind of roaming food truck around Govan. So we were having staff going around Govan, providing hot meals, food packages, and we put Wi-Fi onto that truck very quickly. So we found an unlimited data contract, we put a mobile hotspot on the van, and we gave out free passwords. And we were also very aware that people were still probably likely to hang outside our community centres and use the Wi-Fi there. So we have big signs outside our community centres that says free Wi-Fi here, here's the passwords. We've left this kind of servers running so people can use them. And we do find people are sitting outside in the rain trying to download Netflix now. So that was our kind of first task, was around meeting those 2 immediate needs. At the same time, just before lockdown, we had staff who were in the kind of more vulnerable categories. So asthma, pregnant, they were coming home a week before the lockdown and were being tasked with welfare calls. So our staff were calling around all our tenants, checking they had support, checking that they had food, checking they knew what was happening around lockdown and keeping them up to date with news. So we were very quick to tack in some welfare and Wi-Fi digital chat into those calls. So we were asking tenants, do you have Wi-Fi at home? Do you know where you can get free Wi-Fi? Do you have devices? We had tenants at that stage who were flagging things like, how does WhatsApp work? And I was able to kind of support them over the phone with questions and queries. So we were building kind of an idea of the need of our tenants through those welfare calls, which was a really good help at the start. We already run a digital lending library. So when we started looking at getting devices out to tenants, we were giving out devices just before lockdown so that people had some devices before we were unable to get out to the office. So our library at the time was 25 iPads, 15 laptops, and a couple of kind of small Android tablets, and they all went out to tenants and volunteers and projects who maybe couldn't work from home remotely, so that they could continue engaging with services and providing services. So they all went first day. As soon as lockdown came, we were all out of devices. And then since then, it's been around accessing other devices and how do we get connectivity and devices to tenants who are now facing that barrier week 5 or 6 into lockdown. So the first thing we've been coordinating is a fantastic program with Gift Tech, which is a project out of Glasgow Clyde College, and I can't sing their praises enough. Pre-lockdown, we were using Gift Tech as a way to gift people in need PCs and laptops. The college has a fantastic program where, as they roll out devices and get new PCs into the college, the old ones sit in a room, they are wiped, they are upcycled, and they're given out to people in need. So we quite in the last couple of weeks we've been speaking to Gift Tech about, you know, were they operating during the lockdown period? How could we link in? And unfortunately, the entire program was closed because the college had closed. There was no access to those machines. And there was no distribution network for how they could get devices out to people. So that was very much part of my role in the last 2 weeks, is about we're already delivering food to tenants and prescriptions to tenants, and looking at how we coordinate food collection locally. So being able to tack digital onto that has been important. So we were saying that Gift Tech could give us devices, but only to a centralized location. And we were saying, great, so we'll coordinate the delivery of that, and people can refer in and say they'll get a device and get data and get help set up. So that the first pilot ran this week, where we had 10 PCs and 10 laptops go out to people, a mix of people who were trying to continue college studies, a mix of refugee asylum seekers trying to continue their applications for a status, people who were trying to apply for work, people who had children and couldn't do their homework with their children because they only have a mobile device. So we were able to get devices out to those people very quickly. So the devices bit's important. The other thing we've been doing has been around providing data and connectivity. It's been a slightly smaller or slower start to this program because the logistics of devices has taken up a lot of my time, but we now have a fund in place that should tenants flag that they're having issues with getting online, they can't afford data, that the Housing Association has some funds that we can top up remotely. And we have a list of all the kind of providers and how you can add data to other people's plans. And we've been doing that this week, and last week has been adding bolt-ons of 5 gig, 10 gig to tenants who are in need. And the last kind of piece of work that we've been involved in has been around kind of connecting the dots locally, not just around digital, but in stuff in general. And we had looked, ironically, at the kind of DigiZoom model when we were doing them at the very, very start, and talking about, you know, how do we do something like that locally? We were in an area in Glasgow that was identified as a thriving place. So there was thematic groups around learning for life and work, food provision, children and families, and there was a big question about comms and how do we keep in touch and coordinate programs during lockdown. So we've been trying to host very small conversations with some of the partners who are delivering at the minute around, you know, coordinating some services. And now that funds have started to trickle into Govan and indeed other communities because of Scottish Government funding or the Wellbeing Fund, we've been able to say, right, here's all the people who are getting money to deliver digital and that got money to do devices and connectivity. Let's have chats together about how we get those out to people. How do we make sure we're not giving double and duplicating stuff? How do we make sure we're reaching those really in need? And we've been hosting some of those chats at the minute. So that's been really good. The point we're at now is trying to look to midterm planning. So we are very aware that we are likely to see a small or potentially lifting of restrictions and then a potential lockdown in the future. So what we're trying to identify with the partners is what are the lessons we have learned from this lockdown? How can we put something rapidly in place when the lockdown restrictions are lifted, that should we go into another lockdown, that we are in a more digitally confident place, we know how to get devices out to tenants, and indeed more devices are out to tenants. We know how to top up people's data. We know how to conversations about safeguarding. And we're kind of been working with some partners around training and having that kit ready to go, that when we know what the landscape of lifting the restrictions looks like, we can kind of roll something out instead of sitting about kind of figuring out what we're going to do, because we've got a lot of times on our hands to start planning that now. So that's kind of us. and it's been possible for some fantastic projects who've been in touch and who have been working with us. And again, it works in Govan doesn't necessarily mean it works everywhere. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Rory. That's really interesting. Okay, final speaker we've got up is Dwayne Pascal, who's CTO with Crichton, and he also works with Maddie, you've heard from, with Digital for Good. So Dwayne's going to be talking particularly about some of the more kind of tech interventions they've done and some of the stuff that they've built that's really interesting. So Dwayne, I will invite you in the call. Where's the Aurora Borealis? Yeah,
you know, it was causing problems with my video, I think, or something like that. So I turned it off because it seemed to be causing problems. Or just as these things go, the Aurora stopped. It was very localized to my room anyway. So listen, thanks for having me on the call. So I obviously don't work for a support organization, so I just come at this from a technology side. So as Ross mentioned, I've been involved with Digital for Good with Maddie for a couple of years now, or about a year and a bit, I think now. And really what I've been trying to do is help understand how the technology community can help bridge the gap with some of the people in charitable sectors. An area from my focus personally has been around homelessness and vulnerable people. And so I've been working in the past. I've been a long time supporter of people like Action for Children, and been involved with events like Bite Night. And over the last year or so, I've been more involved with the homeless sector and people. I've met Jamie before and met people involved with street work in Simon Community Scotland. And I've been joining them from a digital strategy point of view to some degree as well too. So I'm just really trying to understand how technology can help some of the people in these sectors. And that's really what I've come onto this call to join up with, is really try to offer that support and understand what we can do from a technology basis that might help across these different individuals sectors, whether that's homelessness or vulnerable people looking for temporary housing, or anything else we can do to even from a technology side that would help the people, especially during the COVID-19 crisis. So my involvement really with Crichton and this as CTO. So we as Crichton, we develop mobile apps for the hospitality sector. That's what the company does. But over the course of a week, when we're at the beginning of April, we kind of set aside some time and let people go off and just do some projects that would be beneficial for COVID-19. One of the things that one of our teams did was develop an app that would help kind of connect people locally with services in their area. They started off just looking at things like people that had, for instance, extra beds, or because it was a hospitality kind of focused thing, we said, oh, let's try see if people have extra beds in hotels they're not operating, or there's very few people in them at the moment. Can they offer up beds or residences that would be available for people like that are in the NHS or in the homeless sector? And I had known that Streetworks at one point had actually I've seen them actually house some people inside of hospitality or hotel services too. So we thought maybe there's an area here of opportunity. So they developed something simple like that, which was really just lets people, if you have a hotel, you can go on and you can say, I've got a few beds available. And if you're somebody looking for support, you'd be able to go in and say, look, I'm looking for, I want to go and be able to use a bed, and it would try to connect those two, and it'd be local to your area. So you'd see a map and see who was in the proximity, because we thought proximity was a really important thing. It's not just kind of, I need to know who's available to me, because if I'm in Edinburgh and I'm homeless, then I'm not going to travel probably to Glasgow as easily as I can. If I can get somewhere close by, that's going to be really important. But all we really got out of that was honestly just a prototype that was developed. We kind of looked at how we can maybe do something with it, but where we were starting to, and this is where connecting the community is actually really important for us, where we started to look at trying to understand how do we then use this, is we got now a technical solution and we're going, or that we can maybe use, but we don't know where the need is, or how do we basically help identify the need in the sector. So we talked to a few people in the NHS, not sure again, a lot of them seem to have those kind of things sorted at the moment. We think the need has maybe gone down there, but maybe in the vulnerable or housing or homelessness situation, if there's anything we can do there, we're happy to do that. Or if there's other things that we can apply the technology to. So this is kind of really just a kind of matching technology. It would be looking at saying, can people offer support in maybe some areas? We can always modify that. It's just an idea. Or over and above that, is there anything further that we can do in the Digital for Good community? We think we have a bunch of people who are available to help in these areas, but they don't know where to apply their skills. They don't know necessarily where they could apply their skills and how it might be beneficial. So one of the things I'm here to do is to help surface that and really look for those areas of opportunity from the community here to see, can we offer those services? Where can we assist? How would you be able to? Where can we maybe help the people that need the support further? And that's me.
Brilliant, thanks, Dwayne. Okay, I think we've got some time for questions, or anyone just kind of wants to make any points. Siobhan, is there any quick ones that have kind of come through the chat, and then we'll bring people in the actual Zoom?
Yeah, so quite a lot of comments just saying on kind of generally what great work it all is, and quite inspiring and really useful tips from all the speakers. Leona is asking of Jamie for more information on the quick wins guide to support staff. Sounds really helpful. Is that something he can share? And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
a question of a couple of speakers is like, how do you actually add the additional data onto people's devices?
Yeah, Rory, do you want to talk about the kind of adding of data to devices?
Yeah, sure. So we have, I'm happy to circulate it round. I've been working with a colleague, Sarah Neary from West Scotland Housing, because we had been speaking about this challenge and about how much data to give people and how much is enough and how do we physically do it. And one of the things that I actually didn't know about a lot of the providers is that you can top up other people's data just by their mobile phone. You can go on to, for example, Leica or Vodafone has a section on quick top-ups where you can type in a mobile phone number and add a data pack and pay by card. So we've been doing that anyway. And what's been good with us is that it's able to directly generate an invoice that we are able to send to our finance team and do the whole practical finance thing. There has been some challenges where people are maybe have had data topped up and haven't seen it, or something's happened in transit, and those have been quite rare. What we've done in those instances is we've went to a shop, my local one across the road from me. I've went down to the shop, practiced appropriate social distancing, purchased a voucher, text the voucher code to the tenant, and the tenant's been able to top up themselves. So there's a kind of a blend between the two, but part of the online element was because we only have one credit card between a team. So so it was about us all being able to manage that stuff. It's been quite a slow take up, again, because we've been doing the kind of device element at the minute, but it's just part of that offer. We were looking at energy top-ups at the time as well, so naturally this came up as conversation.
Apologies there, I think that was my video at my end coming through. There was a video processing on Facebook, and then it eventually processed, then just started playing. So you probably heard John, who Maddie and Siobhan worked with, just talking there, so there was not like some kind of weird voice coming over the top, godlike figure. That was really useful, Rory, thank you for that. I'd be interested, just from a purely selfish point of view, Tom, if you could just give us maybe, say, 3 top tips in terms of content, because I'm conscious for a lot of people who work in house, and particularly a lot of housing associations I've worked with, is the website's still very much a kind of front shop. It's a brochure site that says, here's 7 services we deliver, here's our contact details, that's pretty much it. And in times when people are going to need to self-help a bit more, what could people do just to kind of think through content that's maybe going to put less pressure on those helplines and actually give people the information they need fairly quickly?
I mean, Maddie's been tweeting through all this, and it's what she's been saying is this: a simple fact. You listen to what your clients, the people who use your services, are wanting. You don't just sit there and go, right, I have this information, and I need to put it up there. So you just put it all up there, and you expect them to find out what they want. You need to make sure that whatever you're doing is findable, whatever you're doing is useful to the people. And that may mean some tough conversations when we do a thing called a crit, and that means where you write a bit of work and you give it to your colleagues to look through, and it may mean some tough conversations are going, well, why have you got that? Well, that's the law. The law is important, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you need to just put what a person can take away to identify they've got a problem, whether they can solve it themselves or whether they actually do need to seek further help. So it's a case of understanding what people are actually wanting rather than saying, here's all your advice, sort it out yourself. And that's 3 tips all wrapped up in one bit.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any sites, I mean, other than the shelter one, are there any sites that you particularly look at and think they have got the content nailed?
You know exactly which one I'm going to say. It's the Gov UK and the NHS. So the Gov UK one's brilliant. We take a lot of lead from the process that they're doing, or when we maybe taking a bit of lead is a bit strong, but we always look at them and go, right, that's really interesting. Could we implement that? Would we want to implement that? And what is the process behind them wanting to present the information in a different way? So stuff like they do a useful thing on Gov UK where they do guides. So instead of having a long page, they break the page up into different sections. And we're moving to a new CMS, and we're going to make sure that we have that functionality in the new CMS. So the pages are, I'm going to use a word I hate, bite size and digestible, but it's not overrun the person. You don't want somebody to be feel like they're totally out of the depth. You want them to actually realize, yes, I do have a problem, or no, I don't have a problem, and give them some options. And one of those options has to be calling a helpline. We get a feedback where 30% of people, regardless of what the information we put up on the website, would still want to speak to the helpline. So you still have to recognize that. You can't stop that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Ian Mullen, you've got a question.
Thanks, Ross. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
This has been really helpful. I'm actually a private rented services officer in Edinburgh with the council, and I deal a lot with private landlords, and you'll probably know that private landlords, the rents in Edinburgh and probably in Glasgow are extortionate for people. Prior to my secondment for Unison, I was actually dealing a lot with empty homes, and if this pandemic's shown anything, it is the need and the importance to get empty homes back into residential fit standards for people to move into. I've actually moved away in the last 3 years. I've been seconded to Unison, and I work closely with the Access Point colleagues in Edinburgh, where some of the most vulnerable people are in our society. And the amount of homeless in Edinburgh is absolutely diabolical. It's totally unacceptable. I had a meeting last night with one of the executive directors, and at the end of that meeting I managed to ask him, we've managed to house the vast majority of homeless people in Edinburgh, either in private accommodation, hostels or in hotels, but what is a contingency plan when the lockdown is stopped? What are we going to do with these homeless folk? And the answer I got was, we can't continue to pay for them indefinitely. So whilst there's ongoing dialogue, there is no contingency plan about what we do with the vulnerable and the homeless in Edinburgh once this pandemic does ease off. The other thing that I would like to say at the beginning, Ross, you mentioned that there have been a few of these meetings. I've only just found out about this recently in the last few days through Unison, and I know that some of my colleagues working in the Access Point would like to join in this conversation. So if I could get included, and I can, for future meetings, then I can relay that on to colleagues.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. So Siobhan has put a link. There's a landing page on the SCVO website which kind of scoops together all the resources, like the kind of blog posts, the kind of guidance, and also these Zoom calls as well. So the links are on there. So the ones, as I said, the ones we've got next week, we've got one on Tuesday around digital leadership, and we've got one next Friday around refugees, asylum seekers, and English as a second language. And a similar kind of format. So we usually got 4 speakers talking about their experiences, giving advice, and then a chance for a kind of Q&A and facilitated discussion. Any other questions from the room? So if you want to ask a question, just stick your finger up and I'll pick you out. Oh, so we've got Graham and Amy. So we'll get Graham first and then we'll get Amy to come in. Graham, do you want to unmute yourself and you can jump on the call? In fact, I'll unmute you. There we go. There you go.
Thank you. Graham Lamont from Homeless Network Scotland. I'd just like to, hi Maddie, I'd just like to respond to Ian directly. I think, I mean, everybody was nodding their heads there because we all absolutely agree with everything that you were saying. It is the biggest challenge that we have. You know, we've got rough sleepers off the streets. It's an amazing development. There's all sorts of great stuff going on, but we know what happens come lockdown. Do we get back to that normal? And that's the thing that none of us want to happen. So to Ian in particular, this is not, I'm not advertising anything, by the way. We've got a webinar coming up where we plan to have the head of homelessness from the Scottish Government on our webinar. And that's the question, one of the many questions that we will be asking her, to try to get some kind of lead, some kind of feedback as to what is the Scottish Government's plans. And I'm presuming that they do have some plans. Again, I'm happy to circulate that as and when that webinar happens. We'll just try to sort of pin it down just now. I'll get that out to Maddie. And obviously, you know, there'll be a Q&A facility on that webinar. Again, Ian, you can have your opportunity to ask, you know, the people who are in charge potentially, you know, all those questions, and maybe we can try to get some answers. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Graham. Okay, Amy, has Amy disappeared? Is Amy still? Oh, you're there. There you are. So I have to look through like the many small faces and then figure out where someone is. Amy, do you want to jump in?
Hi there, yeah, Amy from the Glasgow Girls Club. So I just wanted to put a question out to the full panel. So our response really, so we sort of work on a community connectors programme just now in the north of Glasgow, and one of the main things that's really coming up for us, you've probably seen some of the sort of UK-wide stats and some of the stuff coming out from the UNFPA on the sort of rise in domestic abuse and sort of coercive behaviour, and you know, some of the gaps that are now going to start to widen based on the fact that, you know, women aren't, you know, dropping their kids off to school, so, you know, and the kids aren't at school. So really just the increase to helplines when it comes to, you know, sort of you know, the sort of women's aid, and but also there's also this problem that when women are at home, they're not able to make those phone calls. So there's obviously this huge problem that is, you know, predicted to potentially last for a decade based on what's happening just now. So I just wanted to put it out to the group to see if there's anything particular that you guys are sort of looking at as a response to potential homelessness that can happen in terms of the family group, or, you know, what the sort of what your thinking is on that. And, you know, because obviously for us as a connector programme, what we look to do is to collect all of the resources and the responses and the opportunities that are there for women and children, and potentially young women as well, who are also maybe in sort of situations like that, just so that we know what the landscape looks like, and we've got a sort of real strong idea of how we can connect service users into those sort of services.
Okay. I'll throw that out to the speakers, but just very quickly, just to say, we had a call, I think it was last week's call, or maybe the week before, it's all slipping into one, which was specifically for violence against women and girls services. So we had, I think there was 100 and something signed up. So we had pretty much every major rape crisis and women's aid service in Scotland attended that call. Siobhan did some amazing work on pulling together resources. There was loads of good best practice in terms, particularly around digital support for people and some of the safeguarding around that. So if you want, you can put your details in the chat and Siobhan can send, or anyone else who wants that, we can get that out to you. But there's some really good stuff in there. I don't know, Jamie, Tom, Rory, or Dwayne, anything you want to add in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak too much on that from an organisational point of view at Simon Community, only really from the digital perspective. But I think when you do get those sort of issues with complex needs like that, digital is one of the key things that can help with that in terms of, you know, access to support and groups, being able to contact, you know, organisations, and as Ross was just saying, like some of the safeguarding around that, and the so like I think for us it's like we have different services within Simon Community that deal with specific demographics, whereas the Get Digital programme goes across all of it. So we would be a part of a potential solution there, but obviously not the only solution. But yeah, hopefully in terms of digital skills and giving people access and giving people support to, to reach out digitally and find help, that would be a contributing factor to it.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, so from just from the technology side, it is an area when we thought about matching up these kind of support and needs. One of the areas, especially when coming from that accommodations standpoint, COVID-19 I think does give that acute situation where people are in lockdown or maybe have a very, like I said, focused home situation that maybe is not safe for them, or they're in a vulnerable situation. So one of the things we were thinking about is, can we offer relief for that through things like hospitality, where maybe they have extra rooms or facilities available even for a short period, or someplace to go to that is local. So it is an area we've considered. The challenge for us technically, to be honest, is understanding really those complex needs. It's not, we need to make sure that I think, as Amy was saying, how can we provide a solution that lets them access that information safely in the environment they're in? How did we also make sure that they are safe, for instance, and we handle the data safely, and that they're safe in the environment they're going to? And also from the recipient of those people, how do we make sure that they also can provide an environment, or they know what the situation is too? So there's a few areas around there. It's quite a complex, I think, situation to understand. So it is something we'd love to be able to help to if we can, but it's just about understanding that context further.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dwayne. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sorry, on you go, Amy.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, that is you've really nailed that there, Dwayne, that we don't provide the services for the complex needs. So our main role really is that connecting. So that's why I think the sort of got the email addresses for you guys, because it joining those dots, and for us to really be able to understand how to sort of have vetted services, that especially because it's online and everything's digital, it really is the only solution right now, is that it's just having that sort of bank of reliable sources, that you're not sort of passing people on to situations that potentially could be endangering them further. And also just that sort of question of the silent solutions, because there's so much around the sort of browser history. If you're in a situation where your phone's been checked, where you can't have an Instagram account, where you don't get to make a phone call, that it's a big challenge. So I'd be definitely happy to sort of speak with some of you guys based on those challenges.
Yeah, so the doc that I mentioned that Siobhan will send out kind of scoops up a lot of that best practice. I think one of the things we've also tried to encourage people to do in these calls is to try and look out with your sector. So, and I keep giving this example because they've just been kind of so open and generous around it, but Bernardo's shifted one of their services for vulnerable children to WhatsApp, and part of the reason they chose it is because WhatsApp's so ubiquitous. They're not having to give training to someone, and actually it was based upon like what Tom said, when they asked young people what are the platforms you feel comfortable using for support with your key worker, WhatsApp was the answer they were getting back time and time again. So they weren't shoehorning users into some kind of bespoke platform, and now someone's got to download a new app and they don't quite know how it works. So in that main Google document, Bernardo's have really clearly detailed how the process works, how they safeguard people, how they onboard right down to the level of detail, like things like every key worker has a logged safe word with a child that only sits at Bernardo's end, and if the child types in that keyword, they end the call. There's been a lot of thought put into that, so that ability to take that process and adapt that for your own services is really powerful. Siobhan's just put a link to that Bernardo's information in the chat. Okay, we've got time for one more question, so who wants to ask a question? Any takers? It's lunchtime, everyone's hungry. Maddie, anything you want to say to kind of finish up, or Siobhan?
Yeah, my kind of key message this week, Ross, I'm banging on about this all week, is I think it was, in fact, I think everybody said it, but in particularly Tom, was around that thing about take the time to reflect on what work has happened already. And it started with Beth Cantor last week. Have a cup of tea, take the time, take some time out. The last 5-6 weeks, however long it's been, has been years of...
Oh no, Maddie's frozen. Oh no. In such a dramatic pose as well. Oh, it's disappointing. Oh no. We might never know what her point was. This is upsetting me. Oh, Siobhan, have you frozen as well? Am I the only person that's not frozen here? This is quite odd.
Almost got through the entire thing with it an issue.
Oh,
Last
dear me.
question.
It's quite dramatic way to end, though, to be honest. So, I will. So I don't have anyone else who works with me now. Maddie and Siobhan have gone into some kind of weird digital black hole. So thank you very much to the speakers. So Tom, Rory, Jamie, and Dwayne. That was really, really useful stuff and covered a lot of ground in a very, very short space of time. They're all on Twitter as well. Do you want to quickly tell everyone your Twitter handles, just in case anyone wants to follow up or follow you?
I'm Mr. Tom Youll, Youll.
At Jamie D. Trout or Get Digital Scotland, it's at Get Digital Scot. I'll pop it in the chat.
Perfect. Rory?
And mine is at Just Rory B.
Great. Dwayne? Dwayne's gone a digital black hole as well, potentially.
Sorry, no, I'm here. My video's just not working. Sorry.
Okay, cool.
I'm at Mr. D. Sorry, not Mr. I'm at DP Pascal. I'll put it onto the chat as well too.
Perfect. Okay. Grand. We will finish up there. So the main thing, the landing page, it's on the SCVO site, which is in the chat, and that big Google Doc, which collects everything together that we've described. Just to say as well, in that Google Doc, it is pretty huge. You can do Control and F to find stuff through the document, but it's really clearly categorized. So there's like a homelessness section, there's a section on youth work, there's a section on mental health services, and it's basically the space where we've been gathering up all the best practice and all the stuff that's going on in terms of digital service delivery. So there's tons of stuff in there that you can go away and explore. Right, thank you very much. Hopefully Maddie will come back in humanoid form at some point. Who knows where she's gone. And have a nice lunch, have a nice weekend as well. I'll see you all later.
Thanks very much,
See you
Ross.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
See you later on. Oh, no. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Catch you all later.